There's no way I'm marrying that beggar. Oliver Harris is the only man for me. Grace's screech echoed in my ears, dragging me back to the present moment. I've been given a second chance. I've come back to life. In my past life, Grace, my sister, had looked down on Oliver because he wasn't tall, handsome, or rich enough for her. She took my place and married a dirt poor man instead. But when she saw me thriving, living a life better than hers, jealousy consumed her. In a fit of rage, she set my house on fire and left me to perish in the flames. Now, as I watched her flaunt her arrogance again, I couldn't help but smirk. You couldn't handle the struggles of a poor man's life back then. Do you really think you'll survive in the cutthroat world of the rich? They'll tear you apart. Chapter 1. My dad beamed at my sister Grace, practically glowing with pride. Now that's my girl. You've finally seen the light. The Harris family is one of the most powerful in South City. Marry into that, and you'll be living the high life, dripping in luxury. My mom couldn't hide her excitement either. Your sister, well, she's always been destined for hardship, so I found her a poor guy to marry. But you, Grace, you almost threw away a golden opportunity for some nobody. Thank goodness you came to your senses just a month before the wedding. So what if the guy's not handsome? When you're swimming in money, who cares about looks? Grace shot me a smug glance, her lips curling into a smirk. It was just a moment of confusion, she said, her voice dripping with condescension. Then, with a mocking tone, she added, Sis, I'm marrying Oliver now. You're okay with that, right? My dad chuckled. What could your sister possibly have to say? If she dares protest, I'll set her straight myself. That marriage was meant for her anyway, so we're just putting things back where they belong. My mom shot me a warning look. Sophia, the wedding's around the corner. Don't go stirring up trouble. You're marrying that poor fool, and that's final. He may be broke, but he handed over $50,000 for a wedding gift. Who else would be dumb enough to throw that kind of money at someone like you? I smiled calmly. I've got no objections. After all, things are just going back to their rightful place. The world of the rich is full of rules and power struggles. After years of marriage to Oliver, I knew all too well that love had no place in that life. I'd been through enough misery. If Grace wanted it so badly, she could have it. But here's the thing, the wealthy have their own way of doing things, and with Grace's spoiled, lazy ways, she's in for a rude awakening. What I couldn't figure out, though, was why Grace had suddenly changed her mind after my second chance at life. That afternoon, Oliver, the heir to the Harris fortune, arrived at our house with gifts in hand. He was just as I remembered, short, chubby, with a face full of acne scars. His custom-tailored suit did little to hide his awkward appearance, and his small beady eyes sparkled with an unsettling sharpness. Grace, typically dressed to the nines in flashy, revealing outfits, had done a complete change. This time, she wore a simple white dress with barely their makeup that gave her a fresh, innocent look. Her cheeks were flushed with a girlish blush, and she managed to pull off a soft, almost demure charm. Her hair, styled in an effortlessly chic updo, made her look both youthful and polished, with just the right amount of sophistication. Blushing, Grace said, "Sorry to keep you waiting, Oliver. I was just finishing up some work for my boss." No rich guy can resist a girl who looks pure and sweet, and Oliver is no exception. But still, he seemed more curious about her job. "We're about to get married, and you're still working? Don't you get any time off for the wedding?" Grace's cheeks turned an even deeper shade of red. "Oh, I do, but I can't just leave my team hanging. I've got over 100 people depending on me. I had to sacrifice my vacation for them. You don't mind, right, Oliver?" Grace, managing a team? What a joke. She'd been freeloading off our parents ever since she graduated college. This whole career woman act? It was just a carefully crafted image my mom had built for her. In my last life, I had taken Grace's place and married into the Harris family. Oliver hadn't been thrilled at first. But when he found out that I had already landed offers from top companies before even finishing school and that I led teams of over 100 people at just 20, his attitude changed. That's when I realized that Oliver didn't just want a pretty face, he needed a capable woman by his side, someone who could help him cement his position within his family. Together, we had navigated the treacherous world of the Harris family, carefully plotting our moves until, after years of hard work and sacrifice, we finally carved out a place for ourselves. But Grace? She'd always been lazy and entitled, never lifting a finger unless she had to. She'd be eaten alive in a place like the Harris family. And now, here she was, boasting about her work ethic when she wasn't even in the door yet. I couldn't help but wonder how long would it take before Oliver saw her for who she really was. I was looking forward to finding out. Chapter 2. Of course, I don't mind at all. I really admire your dedication to your work and the way you look after your team. Honestly, I'm the lucky one to marry someone like you. Oliver, for all his faults, was still a man from an elite family and knew how to say what people wanted to hear. Judging by the look on his face, he was more than happy with Grace. He then shifted the conversation to topics like real estate and finance. It seemed like casual small talk, but I knew better, it was a test. Surprisingly, Grace handled it with ease, answering his questions confidently as if she'd been studying for this moment her whole life. I was caught off guard. Sure, the questions weren't rocket science, but Grace? She'd never shown any interest in this stuff before. How was she suddenly so well versed? It was becoming clear this time around, things were different. Oliver left looking thoroughly impressed, and my parents practically tripped over themselves to see him out, treating him like some kind of god. Once he was gone, Grace turned to me with a triumphant smile. So sis, how do you think I did? Pretty impressive, right? I gave her a level look. Not bad. But don't get too comfortable. Oliver may not be the sharpest guy in the room, but he's no fool. You can fake it for a while, but eventually, your real self is going to show. And when it does, it's not going to be pretty. Her eyes narrowed and she shot me a cold, venomous look. You only say that because you're jealous. What's so hard about managing a company? I'll figure it out in no time. She leaned in, her voice dripping with arrogance. Mark my words. Not only will I keep this act up, but I'll help Oliver become the heir to the Harris family fortune. I'll be in control of everything. I couldn't help but laugh. The Harris family heir? Their entire fortune? Do you really think you can waltz in and take all that with a few cheap tricks? In the real world, if you want something, you've got to put in the work. And trust me, you've got a long way to go. Grace's face darkened as her eyes turned icy. Who are you calling out? What's the point of hard work anyway? You've been busting your ass for 3 years, and what do you have to show for it? You're still nobody. Meanwhile, I don't lift a finger, and I'm living the high life. I shop all day, party all night, and I don't see you doing any better than me. Her voice dropped, thick with resentment and jealousy. Save your lectures for someone who cares. You'll never get it. A woman's real power is marrying well. Everything else is just noise. I didn't bother arguing. There was no point in trying to explain reality to someone so deluded. She'd learn soon enough. Once she married into the Harris family, she'd realize just how brutal that world could be. The wedding day was fast approaching. With Grace pulling the strings, the wedding Oliver was throwing for her was far more extravagant than the one I remembered from my past life. A fleet of brand new Rolls Royces stretched down the street. Red carpets were rolled out from our front door all the way to the hotel. And the engagement ring? A massive custom diamond that Grace made sure everyone noticed. She couldn't stop posting every detail on social media, flooding her feed with updates about her perfect life. And if that wasn't enough, she made it her personal mission to rub it in my face at every opportunity. Sis, you don't regret swapping places with me, do you? It's too late now anyway. Oliver's completely obsessed with me. Sis, Oliver just gave me an entire stash of luxury makeup. Want me to send you a set? Oh, and sis, I heard that poor fianc of yours had a truckload of boxed mac and cheese and canned beans delivered for your wedding. Seriously, how tacky. If I were marrying him, I'd at least make him bring 2 trucks. You work so hard, don't you think you deserve better than that? I just smiled and let her words slide off me. She could gloat all she wanted. The higher you climb, the harder you fall. This was the happiest she'd ever be, and honestly, I couldn't wait to see how spectacularly it would all come crashing down. In my past life, Adrian Brooks had been set to marry me. But my mother, always chasing after more money, had pushed his family into giving $50,000. In the end, he'd married Grace instead. This time, I was engaged to Adrian again, and I'd think he'd be more invested. But strangely, he was distant, too busy with work to even care. We'd only met a few times before the wedding, and his parents were handling most of the arrangements. Unlike my own money-hungry parents, Adrian's family, though humble and from the countryside, were surprisingly kind and understanding. One day, they came to visit. Chapter 3. Adrian's father, a rough-edged man who used to butcher pigs for a living, didn't mince words. Look, $50,000 is a lot for folks like us, no doubt. But we gave it, and that makes you our daughter-in-law. And as for Adrian, don't think he's avoiding you. He's just working his tail off trying to make enough money so he can give you the life you deserve. His mother, with an apologetic smile, added, I know it's been tough on you, dear. Adrian's always on the go, trying to start this company of his, and we can't seem to rein him in. If you've got any complaints, don't hold back. Let it out, it'll make you feel better. I smiled warmly at them. There's nothing to complain about, really. Adrian's ambition makes me proud. I couldn't be happier. What woman wouldn't want a hardworking husband? In my last life, if it hadn't been for Grace constantly stirring up trouble, racking up debt on online loans, and demanding Adrian's attention day and night, his company would have never gone under. She might have even had a life as comfortable as mine could have been. But here, in this life, with Adrian by my side, I could do nothing at all and still live in comfort. I wouldn't have to worry about a thing. Adrian's mother saw the sincerity in my eyes, and tears welled up in hers. She reached into her purse and pulled out a small, carefully wrapped bundle. Unfolding the layers of cloth, she revealed a beautiful jade bracelet. Take this, darling, she said softly. This bracelet has been in the Brooks family for generations. Now it's yours. A family heirloom? In my last life, I'd never seen Grace wear this bracelet. But after spending years in high society, I could tell at a glance that this was no ordinary piece of jewelry. It was of the highest quality, easily worth hundreds of thousands. I accepted it with a soft smile. Thank you, Mom. The moment I called her Mom, both Adrian's parents lit up with joy. We chatted for hours after that. His mother had heard about how I was never the favored child, how my parents doted on my sister and left me to fend for myself. She understood. As she spoke, tears spilled down her cheeks. Her empathy was so raw, so real. Adrian's father, always blunt, clenched his teeth in frustration. Your parents must be blind. You're out here making tens of thousands a month while Grace sits around doing nothing. How could they not see what a treasure they have in you? They promised that once I was married into the Brooks family, they would never let me be mistreated. Their words touched me in a way I hadn't expected. My eyes glistened with unshed tears as I realized I was experiencing something I'd never had in my past life: genuine parental love and care. Even though Adrian's parents clearly had their issues with mine, they still showed respect for my family for my sake. They bent over backward to meet my parents' demands, even when it wasn't easy for them. Meanwhile, Oliver's parents couldn't have cared less. They barely acknowledged us. After one stiff dinner with my parents, they left everything about the wedding to Oliver and their butler. They barely lifted a finger. But my parents didn't see this as an insult. No, they were proud of it. Oliver's parents are so busy, my father would boast. Just having dinner with them was a huge honor. My mother, on the other hand, sneered at Adrian's parents. They're pathetic, really. If they had any dignity, they wouldn't be groveling like that. My father had already made up his mind about my future. That poor boy's family is practically begging for you to marry into their home. You're in for a life of hardship if you go through with this." My mother was no better. She laughed at me. "So what if they are nice? It won't help you. When a woman marries, it's her husband she has to rely on. If Adrian's indifferent to you now, don't expect that to change after the wedding." Their words didn't faze me. Honestly, I had no emotional attachment to them anymore. Once I was married into the Brooks family, I'd finally be free of them. The night before the wedding, my mother took Grace and me to the secret room she'd set up in our house. She wasn't someone who left things to chance. Marrying her daughters into wealthy families was something she'd been planning for years. Ever since we were little, she'd bring us to this hidden room and teach us everything a lady of high society needed to know: how to do our makeup, how to dress elegantly, how to behave with grace. She drilled us on how to be the perfect wives and taught us the rules of the elite world. Grace was obsessed with fashion and makeup, soaking up every lesson on how to look beautiful. But when it came to the responsibilities of being a wife or learning the ins and outs of high society's rules, she couldn't have cared less. I, on the other hand, had little interest in makeup or clothing. What fascinated me was the world of the elite: how they lived, the unspoken rules they followed, the power they wielded. But my mother always thought Grace was better suited for a life in high society. She believed that to succeed in that world, a woman only needed to look beautiful, keep her husband happy, and navigate the cutthroat social games played among the wives of the wealthy. With her charm and quick thinking, Grace was perfect for that life. As for me, in my mother's eyes, I was too naive. She didn't believe I'd ever fit into that world. Chapter 4. In my last life, when I found out I'd be taking Grace's place to marry Oliver, I holed up in that secret room, cramming every bit of high society etiquette I could. I even went days without eating, trying to keep my figure perfect. I practiced everything, even those ridiculous, seductive poses meant to please a man. Grace, of course, skipped all of that. She was marrying Adrian after all. Why should she bother with any of this nonsense? Out of spite, she did everything she could to disrupt me, making loud noises while I studied, even slipping something into my water that made me break out in a rash on my wedding day. The guests whispered, gossiping about how I'd embarrassed the family. But this time around, it's different. I'm marrying Adrian, and there's no need for me to bother with those silly old rituals. I was curious, though, would Grace finally take this seriously? If she did, maybe she'd suffer a little less when she married into the Harris family. Those lessons, as archaic as they were, did help me avoid a few humiliations in my past life. But no, Grace didn't bother. She saw me skipping the lessons, so she decided to follow suit. My mother practically begged her. "Grace, you're about to marry into the Harris family. At least learn a few things, for heaven's sake." Grace just picked up a best-selling business book from the shelf and waved it dismissively. "Mom, you've been watching too many period dramas. Who even cares about those old traditions anymore? As long as I can help Oliver run the company, no one in the Harris family will dare look down on me." My mother sighed, clearly realizing she couldn't convince her. She let it go. I couldn't help but smirk. Manage a company? Do you think they'll just hand you the reins the moment you walk through the door? They'll be watching you like a hawk, testing you at every step. You're in for a rude awakening. And let's be honest, Grace. You can barely get through a single page of that book without checking your phone for an hour. You're going to run a company? Please. Grace must have caught the smirk on my face because she shot me a cold glare. What are you laughing at? Just because you can't do something doesn't mean I can't. Aha! Sure. You'll do it, all right. And bye. It. I mean, completely crash and burn. I didn't bother responding. Instead, I left the room and went to bed, enjoying a peaceful night's sleep for once. The next morning was bright and full of celebration. It was finally our wedding day. Grace and I were both getting married today, but the contrast couldn't have been clearer. The Harris family spared no expense. A fleet of sleek Rolls-Royces pulled up in front of our house, the kind of ostentatious display that let everyone in town know just how wealthy they were. The Brooks family, on the other hand, while putting on the best show they could for a rural family, couldn't compete with the extravagance of the Harris clan. By comparison, our procession felt modest, almost quaint. But honestly, who cares about the size of the convoy? My groom was leagues ahead of hers. Adrian, standing there in his wedding suit with a bouquet in his hands, looked absolutely stunning. At over 6 feet tall, with long legs and an air of calm confidence, he had a smile on his flawless face that radiated happiness. He was everything I could have ever dreamed of. Meanwhile, Oliver, short, pudgy, and unattractive, might have been wearing a more expensive suit, but even with all the makeup in the world, he couldn't hold a candle to Adrian. No wonder Grace had wanted to swap grooms in my last life. This time, as soon as she saw Adrian, she couldn't help but steal a few glances. Her eyes lingered on him, and I could see the jealousy flicker across her face. Still, she tried to cover it up with a sneer. So what if he's handsome? He's still broke. You can't eat good looks for dinner, can you? I glanced back at Adrian, taking in his perfectly sculpted face, and couldn't help but smile. Honestly, I wouldn't mind taking care of him forever. Actually, I think I could. That clearly got under Grace's skin. She gave me a scornful look before turning back to Oliver, plastering a fake smile on her face. Oliver, you're here. Oliver, needing Grace to secure his position, was all charm. He'd been a playboy for years and knew exactly how to sweet-talk a woman. He took Grace's hand and kissed the back of it, bending low like some kind of prince in a fairy tale. Here to take my princess home. Grace beamed, but not before glancing over her shoulder to flash me a smug, mocking look. I didn't care. I just turned to Adrian, who was smiling warmly at me. He handed me the bouquet and said, "I'm here to take my babe home." Let me tell you, no woman can resist a handsome man calling her babe. Especially when his eyes are filled with such genuine affection. Blushing, I smiled back, taking the bouquet from him and sniffing the flowers. They smell wonderful. Grace, watching us, shot me another envious look before quickly turning back to Oliver. Let's go, Oliver. Of course. Oliver, paying no attention to me or Adrian, was far too focused on getting Grace to the altar. The ceremony was meticulously planned, and everything went off without a hitch. After the reception, a swarm of Brooke's family relatives gathered around me as we prepared to leave the venue. I glanced over at Grace, who was standing tall and radiant in front of the Harris family elders, looking every bit the part of a high society bride. Oliver stood beside her, positively glowing with pride and anticipation. I couldn't wait for the day when it would all come crashing down, when the Harris family would finally see through her and throw her out, and even Oliver would turn his back on her. Chapter 5. The night of the wedding, the room was bathed in warm candlelight, a soft, flickering glow that made everything feel romantic, almost magical. But for all the beauty and warmth, there was an unmistakable loneliness in the air. Adrian had gone out drinking with his friends, leaving me alone in our bridal suite. I understood why. He was still in the early stages of building his business, and maintaining those connections was important. But on our wedding night, it was hard not to feel a little abandoned. Still, loneliness wasn't the only thing I felt. Beneath it all was a strange mix of anticipation and nervousness. I kept glancing at the door, waiting for him to return, unsure of how things would play out between us. We hadn't spent much time together before the wedding, and now, well, tonight was different. Hours passed before I heard the door creak open. Adrian stepped inside, and I could immediately tell he'd had a few drinks. The faint smell of alcohol clung to him. His cheeks were flushed, a little red from the wine, and honestly, he looked incredible. Adrian had always been easy on the eyes, tall, handsome, with that calm confidence, but now, with the slight haze of alcohol softening his features, he had a boyish charm that made him even more irresistible. I blinked, a little caught off guard by how striking he looked in that moment. Still, I managed to ask, "Have you taken care of all your friends?" He looked over at me, and his eyes seemed to clear a little, a warm smile tugging at his lips. "There were a few people I didn't get to spend time with, but I couldn't stop thinking about you being here alone, so I came back." His voice was low and steady, and there was something in the way he said it that made me feel reassured. I couldn't help but feel a little pleased by that. But instead of letting it show, I teased him. "It's fine, really. It's only midnight, you could have stayed out longer. I wouldn't want your friends thinking you've already ditched them for your wife. Adrian's eyes softened, his smile growing. When you're married, your wife should come before your friends. That line hit me harder than I expected. It was sweet to sweet almost. Part of me wanted to believe him, but another part wondered if he really meant it or if this was just the wine talking. Before I could respond, Adrian closed the distance between us. He gently took my hands in his touch warm and steady, grounding me in the moment. "Sophia," he said, his voice a little rough. "From now on, you're my wife. I promise you I'll make sure you're the happiest woman in the world." His eyes met mine, filled with a kind of tenderness and sincerity that made my heart skip a beat. It wasn't just empty words. I could feel the weight behind them, the promise of something real, something lasting. I stood there, frozen for a second, feeling a warmth spread through me. When I finally nodded, I couldn't bring myself to look him in the eye. I was suddenly too shy. Adrian chuckled softly at my reaction, and before I could say anything, he pulled me into his arms. His lips brushed against mine in a gentle, lingering kiss. Without warning, I found myself lying on the bed, our bodies pressed close together. His breath, warm and tinged with the scent of wine, sent a shiver down my spine. The faint, intoxicating smell of alcohol mixed with his natural scent, and it was enough to make my head spin. Everything around us seemed to blur as if the world outside had faded away. All I could hear was the quiet sound of his voice, the rustling of fabric as we undressed, and the soft rhythm of our breathing. That night, we crossed a threshold. It wasn't just a wedding night, it felt like the beginning of something deeper. I can't remember everything we said to each other in those moments, but I do remember this. We promised to be good to each other, to be the kind of husband and wife who would always stand by one another. No matter what the future held, we vowed to face it together, side by side. The next morning, I woke up feeling sore in all the right ways. My mind was filled with flashes of the night before, and every time I thought about it, I felt my cheeks heat up, my heart beating a little faster. Adrian wasn't just handsome, he was strong, fit, and, well, let's just say he had stamina to spare. Compared to Oliver, there was no comparison. Adrian was everything Oliver wasn't, and then some. I couldn't help but think back to my wedding night with Oliver in my previous life. It had been a disaster, to put it lightly. Oliver, already physically weak from years of indulgence, had no real interest in me. He wasn't capable of connecting with me, either emotionally or physically. For years, I was left feeling empty, as if I didn't exist in that marriage. But this time was different. Grace had chosen Oliver, and honestly, that was her loss. I picked up my phone and saw a new post from Grace on social media. She'd uploaded a photo of the Harris family gathered for a traditional ceremony, taken just a few hours ago. Right. I'd almost forgotten one of the Harris family's rules was that new brides had to wake up at 5 in the morning on their first day to participate in the family's ancestral worship. Grace's caption was all positivity, talking about how she was ready to embrace her new life and be a good wife. But I knew her too well. Behind that upbeat post, she had to be falling apart. After spending a night with Oliver, short, pudgy, and entirely unsatisfying, she'd been dragged out of bed at the crack of dawn to perform some old family ritual. I couldn't help but smile to myself. It must have been torture. Chapter 6. I stepped out of the bedroom, feeling pretty good about myself, only to realize Adrian was nowhere to be found. He'd mentioned something last night about being busy with setting up his company and how he wouldn't have much time to spend with me over the next few days. Still, I couldn't help but feel a little disappointed. Wait, why was I feeling this way? Was I already starting to fall for him? That seemed absurd. It hadn't even been that long. I quickly brushed the thought aside, coming up with a more rational explanation. Well, it wasn't like I had fallen in love after just one night. That would be ridiculous. It was probably just physical attraction, right? I thought about the promises Adrian and I had made to each other last night and smiled to myself. Honestly, with him being as good-looking as he was, driven and ambitious, and willing to put up $50,000 for me, what more could I ask for? Even his parents already treated me like family. I had no complaints about this life. Adrian. I murmured softly. I'll make sure I'm the best wife you could ever dream of. As I stood there, a memory from my last life surfaced. Grace, furious and hysterical, screaming at Adrian, calling him worthless, blaming him for ruining her life. I could still see her face twisted in anger, the fire of resentment burning in her eyes. Oh, Grace, I thought with a smirk. Last time, you held Adrian back. But this time, I'm going to make sure he reaches his full potential. In this life, I held a decent position at a large international trading company. I'd been working there for 3 years, managing a team of nearly 100 people. Sure, I wasn't at the top, but I was definitely in a solid leadership role. With my experience, it wouldn't be hard to take on a bigger role, say, as a general manager at a smaller company. I could handle it, no problem. Adrian had been in e-commerce for years before quitting to start his own business. He had big plans to launch an import-export company. In our last life, Grace never lifted a finger to help him. She never worked, never contributed. If anything, she only made things worse. Living in luxury was her only talent, and she had no idea how to manage money. Adrian was constantly struggling to make ends meet while she spent money like water. But this time, I could actually help him. I knew exactly where Adrian had run into trouble in our past life. He needed $70,000 to run his company, and last time, it had taken him months to put that money together. Grace's spending habits meant he could never save up fast enough. She even dipped into his startup funds a few times to buy herself expensive bags and shoes. The poor guy could barely keep up. But this time, I could shorten that timeline to just a month. I'd been working for 3 years, making over $2,000 a month, but I sent most of it back home. I only kept about $500 for myself every month, so my personal savings were just over $7,000. We'd received another $7,000 in wedding gifts yesterday, and Adrian had around $30,000 saved up. That left us about $30,000 short. Adrian still had some freelance work going, and if he could pull in a few more clients, he'd probably be able to add another $7,000 by the end of the month. As for the rest, I could easily cover it. I had a few close friends who'd lend me money without a second thought. And the last $7,000? I could earn that. My team was working on a big project right now, and if we could close the deal, my commission would be around $8,000. In my past life, I quit my job after marrying into the Harris family, so I never finished this project. But this time, I wasn't going to make that mistake. I still had all my experience, and after years of managing the Harris family's business, my skills were sharper than ever. This project? Piece of cake. I threw myself into work, contacting clients, setting up meetings, and reaching out to my closest friends to borrow money. That evening, Adrian came home, looking exhausted from running around all day. I had dinner ready for him when he walked in. He stopped in his tracks, surprised. "You made dinner?" I smiled. "You've had a long day. Consider this a little reward for all your hard work." He chuckled, his tired face softening into a grin as he sat down. After taking a bite, his eyes widened in surprise. "Wow, this is amazing. I had no idea you could cook like this. You're an incredible wife, you know that? I'm one lucky guy." His praise made me feel warm inside. I wasn't the best cook in the world, but I could definitely do better than instant noodles, Grace's specialty. In our past life, Adrian had been so unlucky with Grace dragging him down. But now that I was in the picture, I was determined to make sure he lived the life he deserved. After dinner, we got down to business. I asked him how much money he'd been able to raise for the company. Just as I expected, he was still missing a good chunk of it. "That's okay," I said calmly. "I have $30,000 ready. I'll transfer it to you tonight." Adrian's eyes widened in shock. "Where did you get that much money?" Chapter 7. I've saved up $20,000 over the years, I told him casually. Plus the $7,000 we got as wedding gifts. I didn't mention that I'd borrowed some of the money. I didn't want to overwhelm him or make him feel guilty. Even with just that, Adrian was still reluctant. He kept trying to wave it off, insisting he didn't need it. Are you really going to let me struggle for a few more months? I teased, raising an eyebrow. That made him pause. Of course not, he said quickly. Then take it. I pushed, smiling playfully. If you don't, I might just start sleeping in another room. He looked at me, half laughing, half exasperated. Who forces someone to take money like this? His handsome face was red with a mix of embarrassment and stubbornness. I had to admit, it was the first time I saw him look this adorably awkward. I couldn't help but laugh. Hey, it's give and take, right? You promised to take care of me for life, didn't you? I'm just paying a little interest up front. Then, I softened my tone. Besides, didn't we say last night that we're in this together, building our future side by side? At that, Adrian couldn't help but smile. His eyes softened, and for a moment, I thought I saw them glisten, full of emotion. Don't you dare cry, I teased, trying to lighten the mood. He laughed, shaking his head, but there was something familiar in his gaze. It was the same look he gave me last night before things got heated. My face went red, the memory of our night together stirring something inside me. You're hopeless, I said, trying to hide my own embarrassment. He smirked. We're just returning the favor, aren't we? That night, well, let's just say I didn't get much sleep. The next morning, Adrian was already gone by the time I woke up. I shook off the sleepiness and got ready for work. No one loves going to work, but if I wanted the life I'd been dreaming of, I had to put in the effort. And knowing Adrian would be there when I got home made it all a little easier. Life, I realized, is a blend of joy and hardship. You have to take both in stride. Neither of us had taken a proper honeymoon. While most newlyweds would be off on some romantic getaway, Adrian and I were neck-deep in work. By day, we were both hustling. By night, well, let's just say we didn't slack off there either. It was a busy, fulfilling time. And honestly, I couldn't have been happier. As the days passed, our relationship only deepened. At work, we had a mutual respect for each other's skills. We both knew what the other was capable of, and that trust was unshakable. In our personal life, we were perfectly in sync physically and emotionally. By day, we were the perfect couple. Polite, supportive, and respectful. But at night, we let all that go and just enjoyed each other with no reservations. We weren't just husband and wife. We were partners and teammates, working toward a shared dream of happiness and success. It was a kind of connection I'd never had with Oliver. In my past life, Oliver had used me, kept me at a distance, and never really trusted me. But Adrian? He loved me, cherished me, protected me. He treated me like his equal, his partner in every sense of the word. By the end of the month, I closed the big project I'd been working on. The commission was a cool $8,000, and with my regular salary of $3,000, it all landed in my account at once. Adrian had done well too, managing to bring in over $4,000. His parents, despite their modest means, had chipped in as well. His dad, who worked as a butcher, and his mom, who labored in the fields, managed to pull together $3,000 to help Adrian get his business off the ground. With all the money we'd gathered, we finally had the amount money we needed for the company. There was even a little left over to keep things running for the first couple of months. Adrian took care of all the paperwork, and within a few days, we had our business license. Soon after, we rented a small office. I handled most of the negotiations, managing to save us a good chunk of money on rent and office supplies. The next challenge was hiring staff. Since we were a startup, we couldn't offer high salaries, which made it hard to attract good people. Adrian managed to hire 2 employees, one of whom was a friend of his. But me? I was a pro at this. I knew how to sell a dream and how to make people believe in our future. Plus, I had a long track record of training and mentoring new talent. Within no time, I'd recruited 5 or 6 reliable, hardworking staff members. They were the kind of people who were eager to grow with us and help the company succeed. In less than 2 months, we had a small but functional team, and our little import-export business was officially up and running. Feeling proud of what we'd accomplished, I posted about our company's opening on social media. Normally, whenever I posted something, Grace would jump in with some snide comment. If I posted a picture of a new outfit, she'd say it was out of style and mention how Oliver had just bought her the latest designer piece. If I posted about a fancy restaurant, she'd comment that she and Oliver had already been there and the food was terrible. But this time, silence. Not only did she not comment on my post, but she also didn't like it. And the daily barrage of her showing off her glamorous life. Nowhere to be seen. I knew exactly what was going on. Grace had probably assumed Adrian's business idea was doomed from the start. She never expected us to pull it off, let alone in just 2 months. Meanwhile, what had she accomplished? She thought marrying into the Harris family would give her a seat at the table, but I bet she hadn't even set foot in one of their boardrooms yet. In a family like Harris, a new daughter-in-law was still an outsider until she proved herself. It didn't matter how rich or powerful they were until then, she was just another face. And with all those suffocating family rules? Grace had to be feeling the pinch by now. Honestly, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. Chapter 8. Not long after the company opened, Thanksgiving rolled around. It's traditional for families to gather at their parents' homes during the holiday. When we arrived, the first thing I spotted was Grace's white BMW, the one she got as part of her wedding gift. I knew Oliver wasn't here because his flashy Range Rover was nowhere to be seen. I tugged Adrian's hand and led him inside. Like most new sons-in-law, Adrian felt awkward at my mom's house. To be fair, my mom's cold stares probably didn't help either. After dropping off the gifts, he quickly escaped outside to play with our family dog. As I walked into the living room, I overheard Grace complaining to my mom in the next room. "Mom, you have no idea how strict the Harris family is." Grace was practically whining. "You can't leave food on your plate, you can't slouch when you sit, you can't hunch your shoulders when you stand. You've got to be home by midnight, no going to bars or clubs. And don't even get me started on how I'm supposed to watch every move I make in public. I get scolded all the time." That's the Harris family for you. Big, wealthy, and drowning in rules. In my past life, even though I'd prepared myself and followed their customs as best as I could, I still struggled. Grace? She's been pampered her whole life and never had to follow anyone's rules. I could only imagine how hard it was for her. Well, that's how it is in these rich families. My mom said in a soothing tone she'd never used with me. They care about appearances, but you'll get used to it eventually. Get used to it? Easier said than done. Grace snapped, clearly more frustrated by my mom's attempt to calm her down. You don't get it, Mom. Oliver might look like he's got power and money, but in reality, he has no say in anything. When I get yelled at or punished, he doesn't even dare to defend me. And my mother-in-law? I made one tiny suggestion, and she slapped me across the face in front of everyone. And if that wasn't bad enough, I barely got any money to spend. Oliver's always off drinking and gambling, and then he only gives me a measly $2,000 or $3,000 a month. It's not enough. You and Dad gave me more than that. I thought I'd at least be able to earn something by working in the family business, but they keep blocking me at every turn. My mom gasped, clearly upset. What? Oliver's that useless? And your mother-in-law is that nasty? They don't even give you money? What kind of life is that? I rolled my eyes. Grace sure knew how to spin things to make herself look like the victim. Does Oliver have no power? Please. Maybe if she stopped causing trouble, things wouldn't be so bad. As for getting slapped, was it really just a suggestion? Or was she mouthing off? And only 2,000 or 3,000 yuan a month? Yeah, right. Oliver might drink and gamble, but he's not that cheap. She must be exaggerating. Always bragging about leading teams and having savings. That's probably why he doesn't give her more money. Honestly, she deserves every bit of it. Just then, I heard the dog barking outside. Is someone here? Is it your sister? Grace and my mom came out of the room, distracted by the noise. I sighed internally. I'd been hoping to listen in a little longer. Adrian, what are you up to? The moment my mom saw me, she launched into her usual complaints. You little brat! You just got married and already forgot about your poor mother? Look at the time. How could you show up so late? It wasn't even that late, barely past 10 in the morning. There's no set time for visiting on Thanksgiving. But I knew better than to argue. Traffic was terrible, I said, shrugging. Grace shot me a cold look. Excuses. You could have left at 6 and avoided the traffic. She glanced at the boxes of food I'd brought, simple things like homemade chili and packs of Gatorade that are common gifts in the countryside. Is this all you brought for Mom? You're kidding, right? This is a joke. In rural areas, these kinds of gifts are perfectly fine, practical and affordable. And considering how my mom treated me, I'd gone above and beyond by adding 10 pounds of eggs. That was more than enough. Grace, on the other hand, in our past life, she never brought anything when she came back home. And now, even though she'd married into the Harris family, I doubted she was any different. I turned to her, my voice dripping with sarcasm. So, what did you bring for Mom? Don't tell me you came empty-handed. Grace's smug expression faltered, and for a moment, she looked caught off guard. Who said I came empty-handed? I glanced around with mock curiosity. Oh. Then where's your gift? Let's see what you got. Grace shot me a dirty look and fumbled with her purse. After some awkward digging, she pulled out a thin, unimpressive gold bracelet. Here, Mom, she said, forcing a smile. I got this for you. I just forgot to give it to you earlier because we were busy talking. Chapter 9. My mom hesitated for just a second. Then, her face lit up with a smile. Oh, wow! This is beautiful. My sweet daughter, you bought me such an expensive gift. This must have cost thousands, right? She quickly turned her attention to me, her expression hardening. Look at your sister. Look at yourself. What's the point of raising you? Did the things you brought even cost $100? I stayed silent. What could I say? They were being so shameless that anything I said would be pointless. But my mom wasn't done. Was this your idea or that broke husband of yours? You two are so cheap, it's embarrassing. Grace, always one to stir the pot, chimed in with a smirk. Mom, don't be so hard on her. After all, with my sister's husband barely scraping by with that little company of his, they have to save money somehow, right? My mom shot me a cold look. Speaking of that, it reminds me, didn't that broke guy give $40,000 to us? Where did he get the money to start a business? Tell me, how much of your money have you poured into that so-called company? I kept my voice calm. Adrian and I are married. What we have is our shared money, our joint property. We can spend it however we see fit. My mom's face turned red with anger. Joint property? You're my daughter. The money you make should have my share in it. Ever since you got married, you haven't sent a single cent home. You better shut down that useless business and start sending me money every month, just like before. From the corner of my eye, I noticed Grace's smirk falter. In the past, most of the money I sent home ended up in her pocket, and now that she was married to Oliver, I guess she hadn't counted on losing that extra income. I shook my head. There's no money to send. Everything's tied up in the business, and we're still in debt. If you're really short on cash, you should ask Grace. After all, she's married to Oliver and he's loaded. Grace's expression turned sour. Do you seriously think Mom's asking for your money? Mom doesn't need your little handouts. She's just worried you're throwing your money away for nothing. She's looking out for you. My mom nodded, her voice sharp. Exactly. I'm only trying to protect you from being taken advantage of by Adrian. From now on, you should send me your monthly salary. I'll save it for you, so when that loser bankrupts you, at least you'll have something to fall back on. Shameless. I took a deep breath and answered firmly. I appreciate the concern, Mom, but I'll manage my own life. I've spent too much time and effort building this business to just shut it down. My mom's voice rose. You've really grown up, haven't you? You don't listen to a word I say anymore. Do you really think sticking with Adrian is going to bring you a good life? You're not like your sister. You were born to be poor, and if you keep fighting your fate, you'll end up with nothing. Grace added her 2 cents, her tone dripping with superiority. Sis, you and Adrian are just regular people. You don't have the skills to run a company. You should both just get regular jobs and live a steady life. That business of yours is going nowhere. I met her gaze, my voice steady. I don't believe in fate. I believe in myself. You're trying to drive me to an early grave, aren't you? My mom shrieked. She raised her hand ready to slap me. I instinctively flinched, but before her hand could make contact, a tall figure stepped between us. It was Adrian. He grabbed my mom's wrist, his voice calm but firm. I'd like to see anyone try to hurt my wife. His words were cool, carrying an edge of warning. I couldn't help but feel a sense of relief wash over me. Even though I knew I could dodge that slap on my own, having Adrian there made me feel protected. Let go of me, you worthless trash. My mom struggled, her face twisted in anger. Grace, suddenly frantic, rushed at Adrian, beating her fists against his chest. Let go of my mom, you bastard. How dare you? I was a little surprised by Grace's reaction. Since when had she become so protective of our mom? She'd never been the filial daughter before. I pulled Grace away and scolded Adrian, trying to defuse the situation. What are you doing? Let go of her. She's our mom. Adrian's jaw tightened and he released my mom's wrist with a cold huff. This better not happen again. He muttered darkly. Chapter 10. You think you can hit me? How dare you? My mom screamed as she clawed at Adrian, her nails aiming for his face. I quickly stepped in, pulling her away before things got worse. She wasn't done though. Are you even my daughter anymore? On Thanksgiving Day, of all days, and you bring this worthless man here to gang up on your own mother? Get out! Both of you, leave my house right now. You're no daughter of mine. She pointed furiously at the gifts we'd brought. And take this trash with you. Just looking at it makes me sick. I turned to Adrian with a calm smile. Didn't you hear what Mom said? Let's pack everything up and head home. Adrian blinked, caught off guard by my response. Grace, meanwhile, looked like she couldn't believe what she was hearing. My mom's eyes widened as if she was thinking, "You're really going to take the gifts back?" Grace shot me an incredulous look. Sis, seriously? Who does that? Since when have you taken back gifts? I sighed dramatically and said, well, if Mom says the sight of them makes her sick, I can't just leave them behind. What if she gets ill? I'd be the one to blame. Grace was left speechless, her mouth opening and closing with no comeback. My mom, fuming, stormed off into her room and slammed the door. Adrian gave me a small, amused smile and began packing the gifts back into the car. Honestly, I didn't care if I had to toss those gifts in the trash later. What did they cost me? A couple $100. No big deal. If Adrian's company wasn't just starting out and I wasn't worried about my mom causing more trouble down the road, I would have cut ties with her a long time ago. We loaded the last of the gifts into the trunk, and just as we were about to leave, Grace came rushing out, calling after me. Wait, sis. I need to talk to you. Something in her voice caught my attention. I glanced at her, curious. What was this about? Adrian looked concerned, but I waved him off. Don't worry, it's fine. Grace wasn't exactly a threat. What's the worst she could do? Still, Adrian stayed close to the car, watching us like a hawk, just in case Grace tried anything. She led me across the street, away from the house, until we were standing near an old dirt pit. All right, I said, crossing my arms. We're far enough. If you wanted to kill me, Adrian wouldn't make it over here in time. Grace's face twisted with a sneer. Sophia, do you actually believe marrying Adrian is going to give you some fairy tale life? I raised an eyebrow at her, but before I could respond, she continued, her voice dripping with condescension. Let me give you a reality check. Adrian's little business? It's going to fail. Soon. No clients, no deals, he'll be bankrupt before you know it. I stared at her, taken aback. How the hell did she know so much? The confidence in her voice unnerved me. Then, like a puzzle piece snapping into place, a wild thought hit me. You've been reborn too, haven't you? Grace's eyes widened in shock. You've been reborn as well? Suddenly, everything made sense. No wonder she'd married Oliver this time around. She was playing a completely different game than in our last life, and now I knew why. She had memories from before, just like I did. Rage simmered in my chest as the memories of what she'd done to me in our past life came flooding back, how she'd left me to perish in that fire. I narrowed my eyes at her, my voice cold. Oh, I heard you complaining to Mom earlier. So, you ended up with Oliver, huh? And yet, here you are, still miserable in this life. How's that working out for you? Feeling good about those choices? Shut up! Grace screamed, her face red with fury. She raised her hand, ready to slap me. But before she could strike, I caught her wrist effortlessly and slapped her across the face instead. Did you really think I'm still the same Sophia you pushed around in our last life? Grace stumbled back, stunned. You hit me? Her whole body trembled with rage, her face contorting as she tried to process what had just happened. She raised her hand again, but I was quicker. Another slap landed squarely on her cheek. Smack! This time, the force sent her sprawling to the ground. She lay there, her hair a mess, her face frozen in shock. I towered over her, my voice low and steady. Consider that a warning. I might let go of what happened in the past, but only if you stay out of my life from now on. Cross me again, and I'll make sure you lose everything. Just as I finished speaking, I heard footsteps behind me. I turned around and saw Adrian standing there, his arms crossed, a mixture of concern and amusement on his face. What are you doing here? I frowned. This was between the two of us. Girl stuff. Adrian raised an eyebrow. You really wandered off just to get into a fight? I scratched my head, embarrassed. Well, yeah, kind of. He sighed, his expression softening. You know, fighting isn't exactly the most ladylike thing. His tone was stern, but I could see the worry in his eyes. It made my heart warm knowing he cared. I grinned sheepishly. All right. No more fighting. I promise. Besides, it's not like I hit an actual person. I just hit a monster, right? Adrian, who had been trying to stay serious, finally cracked a smile at my joke. Come on, he said, shaking his head. Let's go home. Chapter 11. My sister watched us leave sweetly, her molars grinding in anger. She pounded the ground, shouting, Sophia, Adrian, I won't let you two off. The Oliverson family will soon let me manage the company, and your little business will collapse in no time. I didn't want to tell Adrian about the rebirth. Don't listen to my sister. She's just talking nonsense. However, after getting into the car, Adrian frowned, and I realized this was no simple matter. In my previous life, I didn't know much about Adrian's company. I only knew it went bankrupt because of my sister's antics. But I knew that someone as capable as Adrian wouldn't have failed so badly if the company had been doing well. I asked Adrian, Is there something wrong with the company? Adrian held my hand, honestly saying, Yes, there are some issues. A client ran off, leaving us with a warehouse full of goods we can't sell. The money on hand isn't enough to buy new stock, and the cash flow is tight. But trust me, I'll fix it soon. I said. No. Adrian looked at me in surprise. I held his hand tightly, smiling. We'll fix it together. Adrian squeezed my hand, his smile warm. All right. We returned to the company and started brainstorming solutions. After understanding the situation, I realized the biggest problem was a batch of high-end imported baby formula and mother baby products worth about $20,000. These items, if in large quantities, would be easy to find buyers for. But with the clients gone, the remaining stock was just enough to be a headache. Experienced dealers were offering prices far below our cost. Selling them retail wasn't easy either. These items had high unit prices and required precise targeting. The employee in charge of these goods was so desperate he considered live streaming, but selling such products online wasn't easy. I had 3 years of experience in import-export trade and many connections. I remembered a client from 2 years ago in the mother-baby industry who had been scammed and left penniless. I helped him find a lawyer and win the case, saving him from jail. Now, this client had grown from a small vendor to one of the top 3 mother-baby product suppliers in the city, with several large warehouses in the suburbs. In my previous life, after marrying into the Oliverson family, I had collaborated with him, earning millions. Though using this favor now seemed a bit wasteful, I didn't mind. In my previous life, no matter how well I did, it was for the Oliverson family. This time, it was for myself and the man I loved. I called the client, and he immediately agreed to take the goods. He offered to pay market price, but I gave him a $2,000 discount as a gesture of goodwill. Before hanging up, he mentioned that if Adrian's company ever needed help, we could collaborate in the future. I could tell he wasn't just being polite. But with Adrian's company still small, we weren't ready for that yet. I knew my limits. Having used this favor, we'd need to show our sincerity for future collaborations. My one phone call solved the company's crisis, leaving Adrian and the employees in awe. I modestly said, "Just lucky. I happened to help Mr. Zhang before." Adrian's eyes sparkled, looking at me like a hero. "My wife is amazing." I said it was luck. I waved my hand, looking at Adrian's handsome face and his squinting eyes, finding him cute. Unexpectedly, he stepped forward and kissed me on the cheek. "Ah, boss, that's so sweet. Boss is so bad. Isn't this torturing us single people?" The whole company erupted in excitement. My cheeks turned as red as an apple, and I pulled Adrian aside. "Adrian, the employees are watching. Aren't you embarrassed?" Adrian smirked. "There are only a few people. Why would I be embarrassed? How about you help me hire more people? Maybe then I'll be embarrassed." I laughed. "You're as calculating as my mom." Chapter 12. After selling the mother-baby products, Adrian quickly sold the remaining stock at either low prices or to acquaintances. The crisis seemed resolved, but I felt it wasn't that simple. Those clients running off almost simultaneously, just after Adrian took a big order and invested all the company's money, seemed too coincidental. In my previous life, I had seen too many business schemes. I suspected this was a setup to break Adrian's cash flow. Who could be behind this? Adrian and I had no known enemies. Could it be my sister? Impossible. She had no motive. She didn't know I was reborn and didn't believe in Adrian's company. To be safe, I hired a private investigator to look into it. Regardless of the truth, we needed to strengthen our company to withstand future risks. Over the next month, I spent more time at Adrian's company, setting development directions, leading the team, and connecting with clients. I worked tirelessly, achieving more than the entire company combined. No one in the company doubted my abilities. Adrian didn't disappoint either, securing several large orders with his skills and connections. Our revenue tripled compared to the previous month. The second month, we continued to work hard, and the company's profit reached $30,000. By the third month, we had $300,000 in the bank. We could now handle projects worth over $100,000. As Adrian's company thrived, my sister's situation worsened. A friend in the Oliverson group told me my sister had become a joke in the family. Initially, the Oliversons gave her a vice president position in a subsidiary. Many people were unhappy with her appointment. She fired several senior employees, causing unrest. The subsidiary's performance stagnated, and employees became demotivated. To boost morale, she introduced an incentive scheme with attractive rewards. Several employees met the targets, and the company showed signs of improvement. But she then withheld the bonuses, claiming they exploited loopholes, and fired them. This disheartened the remaining employees, leading to mass resignations. The company struggled, and she had to hire replacements at higher salaries, losing more money. After these incidents, the Oliverson family lost faith in her. To prove herself, she formed a new team and set ambitious goals. Despite initial progress, she failed to deliver. To cover up, she poached a major deal from an established team, causing them to leave and losing valuable clients. Oliver was furious, losing millions and becoming a family disgrace. I wasn't surprised. I knew my sister well. She always thought she was smarter than everyone else. She wanted results without effort. How could she not fail? I believed if she continued, the Oliverson family would eventually kick her out. If she stopped now, she might still have a few years of stability. But her fate was no longer my concern. As long as she didn't interfere in my life, she could do as she pleased. Once Adrian's company grew stronger, I planned to cut ties with my family. But trouble came sooner than expected. Chapter 13. After the Dragon Boat Festival, my mother frequently called, demanding money. I refused, saying the company wasn't making money. She said my sister told her I was making money. So my sister was keeping tabs on us. Even if she knew, I wouldn't give her money. My mother cursed me, but I didn't care. I insisted I had no money and was in debt. The next day, my parents came to my workplace with banners, demanding money, attracting a crowd. Fortunately, I had prepared, having a bank friend forge documents showing I was in debt. In front of cameras, I knelt before my mother, tearfully saying, "Mom, it's not that I don't want to give you money. I really don't have any." My sister and I had a grand wedding, making us minor celebrities online. I had arranged for people to shout. Her younger sister married into a wealthy family, but she married a poor man. Why ask her for money? Isn't this favoritism? Where's the conscience? This old lady has money but demands from her daughter? People were outraged. The incident quickly spread online. My mother, throwing a tantrum, showed her true colors. "You don't know what you're talking about. I'm not like that. I have no money." People took out their phones to record. She received a call, panicked, and left with my father. I knew the call was from my sister. My parents' stunt was her idea. She reacted quickly, but the internet was faster. Many videos went viral, and the incident trended locally. I know the person involved. She's been exploited for years. How can a mother do this? Her younger daughter married into the Oliverson family, right? This makes me angry. Parents causing trouble for their kids. Is the younger daughter unfilial, so they ask the older one for money? The story spread, affecting the Oliverson family's reputation. They used their influence to suppress the news, but the damage was done. In my previous life, I knew the Oliverson family would hold their children accountable for such scandals. My sister was in trouble. I didn't know the exact punishment, but she called, furiously accusing me of being deceitful and shameless. Later, a friend told me my sister and Oliver knelt in the family shrine for a day and a night. My parents weren't spared either, facing rumors and gossip in the village. The incident affected me too. Some clients became cautious, fearing my mother would cause more trouble. My former company didn't want to keep me. Since Adrian's company started, my heart wasn't in my job. My performance had declined. They used my mother's potential trouble as an excuse to fire me. I didn't mind. Adrian's company was doing well. I didn't need to work for others. The debt story seemed like a self-inflicted wound, but it wasn't. I explained the situation to my major clients, and they spread the word, clearing my name. Smaller clients didn't matter. Once Adrian's company grew, the debt story would be a joke. Chapter 14. Fully dedicating myself to Adrian's company, we made rapid progress. Our team grew from 10 to 50, then to 100. We achieved monthly sales of $1 million. After deducting costs, we made tens of thousands in profit each month. I trained several trusted employees, allowing myself to relax a bit. Now, people called me Miss Chen. Even my former boss reached out to mend fences. Those who had badmouthed me now apologized and tried to curry favor. I hadn't heard from my sister in a while. The next news was that she was back managing a company. A friend said she had invested $100,000 in a new project. After the previous incident, Oliver wouldn't give her money. She had always been extravagant. Where did she get the money? I quickly deduced. The money must have come from my mother. When my mother asked me for money, it was for my sister's project. Unable to get it from me, she used her own. In my previous life, when I married into the Oliverson family and needed money for a project, my mother refused to lend me $10,000, demanding living expenses instead. This time, she still asked me for money for my sister. Can you believe it? Given my sister's nature, the project was doomed. $100,000 would be wasted. I only wanted to grow Adrian's company and distance myself from them. We decided to launch an online store, a website selling imported goods. We had planned this from the start, but the company's rapid growth allowed us to do it sooner. With my knowledge of future trends, I knew the economy would worsen, making an online store essential. Better to start now than later. Adrian and I agreed and began immediately. I handled sourcing, traveling domestically and internationally. Adrian focused on marketing and attracting customers. We were busier than ever, sometimes not seeing each other for a week. We even arranged to meet in different cities, booking hourly rooms for brief reunions before parting ways. The distance seemed to strengthen our bond, making our meetings more passionate. But long distance wasn't sustainable. A month later, our website was up, with daily traffic exceeding 1,000. We reduced our travel, increasing our intimate moments, sometimes spending entire nights together. I loved this man more and more. My sister's situation worsened. Her project failed, losing hundreds of thousands, including Oliver's investment. Oliver, furious, ignored her, often staying out late. Serves her right. I hoped she learned her lesson and stopped causing trouble. Chapter 15. However, my sister wasn't giving up. Someone convinced her to invest more, promising returns. She borrowed another $100,000 from my mother. The project failed again. My mother, desperate, asked me for money, saying she had given everything to my sister. I refused, citing the online store's expenses. She cursed me and blocked me, saying I was no longer her daughter. In my previous life, she used this threat to manipulate me. This time I welcomed it. Days passed without me giving in, and my mother grew anxious. My sister was even more desperate. She called, accusing me. Sophia, do you have any conscience? You're making Mom sick. If you still recognize her, give her $200,000. I laughed. $200,000? Do you think money grows on trees? You're a married woman, making business deals with Mom's money. How filial. My sister was shocked. You know. I mocked. Yes, I know a lot. My sister, realizing my implication, angrily said, Don't get cocky. I'm just temporarily down. One day, I'll control the Oliverson family. I taunted. Control the Oliverson family? With what? You can't even manage a small subsidiary. Using family money to cover your losses, do we have a gold mine? My sister, humiliated, cursed me, saying she would make millions and buy out Adrian's company, making me regret it. I hung up, tired of her delusions. Our online store's daily traffic exceeded 10,000, a good start. We had much to do. Our goal was to reach 100,000 daily visitors. Though it seemed small, our store sold imported goods, targeting a niche market accustomed to offline shopping. Converting them to online customers required effort. Adrian, a marketing expert, formed a short video team, creating engaging and emotional content to attract visitors. He also bought high-end mall ads to boost our site's prestige. These efforts increased our traffic. Once we had visitors, we needed to retain them. No matter how good the marketing, without quality products and services, customers would leave. No online store could guarantee product quality unless fully self-operated. We couldn't fully self-operate yet. Our strategy was to start with external vendors, gradually increasing self-operated stores to minimize risk. Chapter 16. Currently, we had 90% external vendors and 10% self-operated stores. For external vendors, we increased oversight, offering a tenfold refund for fakes and providing subsidies to ensure their profits. For self-operated stores, we strictly controlled product quality, focusing on reputation over profit. We specialized in imported mother-baby products, cosmetics, and snacks. Adrian had connections in the snack industry, which we had been developing early on. 70% of our sales came from snacks. Mother-baby products and cosmetics were our weak points. I had resources in these areas. Our online store gained some fame, growing rapidly. I arranged a dinner with the mother-baby product supplier I had helped before, securing a large batch of goods and vendors. I also reconnected with a semi-retired cosmetics supplier from the early days of online sales, signing a contract to solve our cosmetics supply issue. With high-quality, competitively priced goods and guarantees, we quickly gained a reputation. Our daily traffic first exceeded 10,000, then 20,000, 50,000, and finally stabilized at 100,000. Our monthly sales exceeded $10 million, with a profit of 500,000. People in the industry called us business geniuses, rising from humble beginnings to success in just 2 years. With money and a loving relationship, Adrian and I were envied by many. My sister's situation was the opposite. A friend told me she had invested another 100,000 in a project, only to fail again. Oliver, losing millions, was furious and distanced himself from her. My parents, having given all their money to my sister, were now struggling, unable to get money from me. Though my sister and parents were in dire straits, I felt it wasn't time to cut ties yet. Adrian's company needed to be stronger. I planned to wait a year before severing ties, but trouble came sooner. Chapter 17. My sister, jealous of our success, conspired with Oliver to take over our online store, offering to handle operations while we provided the goods, demanding 90% of the profits. At a dinner meeting, my sister arrogantly said, "Your website design is terrible. My company's designers will redo it. This counts as a technical investment, giving us 51% of your company. Taking 90% of the profits and demanding majority ownership for a website redesign. They wanted to take over our company. I was furious. This is robbery." Oliver, silent but stern, seemed to agree. I knew Oliver wasn't inherently bad. He was just desperate after my sister's failures. My sister shamelessly said, "Who are you calling a robber? I'm helping you. Hand over the company and it will truly thrive." I retorted, "If you're so capable, why not start your own website?" My sister's eyes filled with jealousy and hatred. "Servants do the work, the emperor manages people." Twisting words. I laughed. "Admit you lack the ability and want to steal my hard work." My sister, enraged, shouted, "Nonsense! You're the one without ability. Taking over your website is your honor. Don't be ungrateful. Enough." Even Oliver couldn't stand it, glaring at my sister, then coldly saying to me, "I don't want to waste time." Chapter 18. CXNet is your and Adrian's hard work. You don't want it ruined by a bad decision, do you? I narrowed my eyes. "Are you threatening me? You can see it that way." Oliver said indifferently, his eyes arrogant. He had the right to be confident. Despite his mediocrity as a Oliverson, he had resources and connections far beyond ours. I looked at Adrian, his handsome face calm and composed. Adrian said, Since we can't agree, there's no need to continue. Oliver sneered. Brave. My sister, disdainful, seemed to say. Just like in our past life, you're a brainless fool. I stood up, taking Adrian's hand, and we walked out. Behind us, Oliver said coldly, You'll come back to me in a few days. My sister shouted. Accept your fate. You'll never beat me. Ignoring their words, I smiled at Adrian. You're the man I chose, brave and strong. Adrian smiled warmly. No matter what we face, I'll stand by you. The next day, my sister and Oliver used their connections to launch an aggressive attack on our company. First, our import trade business was hit hard. Many clients canceled their contracts. In just one day, we lost 60% of our clients and 80% of our revenue. Our warehouse was filled with millions of dollars worth of unsold goods. Adrian and I quickly rented several warehouses to prevent the stock from piling up and disrupting operations. Our online store could handle some of the goods, but we needed to find buyers for the rest. With Oliver blocking our efforts, it took us a whole day to sell half of the stock, and that was at cost price. The remaining goods included perishable items like fruits and bread, which were practically unsellable. In just one day, we lost hundreds of thousands of dollars, and in the coming days, we were set to lose millions more. My sister and Oliver's attack was relentless. That night, my parents came to our house to persuade me. My mother said, You ungrateful girl, your sister said you lost millions today. You should have given that money to me. You're a failure, you can't run a company. Let your sister take over. My father added, Do what your sister says. She's family. The money stays within the family. I kicked them out. They threatened to go to the media and ruin my reputation. I knew my sister had put them up to it, so I told them to do whatever they wanted. I was no longer their daughter. They threw a tantrum outside our house for an hour before leaving. Late at night, I lay in bed, feeling frustrated. Adrian entered the room. Seeing him, my frustration melted into a smile. You're back? Adrian didn't say a word, just hugged me tightly. His touch, gentle at first, grew more intense. His warm breath brushed against my face, his eyes filled with longing. I asked, What's wrong? He kissed my forehead. Sophia, I have to leave for an urgent matter. You'll have to handle the company alone for a while. I was stunned, a mix of emotions welling up inside me. Though I had suspected something, it was hard to accept. He had been hiding something from me. With the company in crisis, he was leaving me to handle it alone. I was silent for a few seconds, not wanting to act like a spoiled child or ask too many questions. I knew there were things beyond our control. I told Adrian, Don't worry. I'll manage the company. Take care of yourself. Adrian looked guilty. I'll be back soon. Get some rest tonight. I turned away. Okay, Chapter 19. Adrian left, and I was left to manage the company alone. My sister's attacks intensified, severely impacting our import trade business. Half of our business came from the online store. As long as they didn't touch it, we could survive. My parents went online, playing the victim, saying I had millions but refused to support them. They had prepared their story well, twisting the truth and making us look bad. Suddenly, I was labeled an ungrateful daughter, accused of mistreating my parents despite being wealthy. However, I had prepared for this. I had recorded my mother's calls demanding money and had security footage of her causing a scene at our house. I also had records of the money I had sent home before marriage. I released the evidence online, turning the tide. Public opinion quickly shifted, with many people supporting me. My sister had anticipated this, and the Oliverson family managed to contain the damage. But I still gained some benefit. The incident brought traffic to our online store, and I took advantage of the exposure, buying a few $1 million worth of goods to offset some losses. However, with our import trade business collapsing, I couldn't hold out for long. The next day, my sister, unable to break us, tried other tactics. She sent inspectors from various government departments to investigate us. Fortunately, our company was compliant, leaving them no grounds for action. My sister was furious. On the third day, she hired hackers to attack our website servers. Our site experienced downtime and slow loading, severely affecting user experience. Forums and user groups were filled with complaints. By the fourth day, our daily traffic had dropped significantly, and rumors spread that our site was going under. I organized a PR response, but it had little effect. In the following days, our traffic continued to decline, falling below 10,000 daily visits. Our sales plummeted, and we received a flood of return orders. Vendors, sensing trouble, began withdrawing their stores. Many of our major clients canceled their contracts. With external pressure mounting, internal turmoil followed. With the import trade business gone, employees lost confidence in the company's future, leading to mass resignations. My trusted lieutenants, whom I had trained for 2 years, were poached by competitors. The remaining staff were anxious and uncertain. Despite my efforts to stabilize the situation, the company was in chaos. Within a month, we had burned through all our cash reserves and owed money to numerous clients and suppliers. A debt crisis loomed. My sister called, offering a lifeline. She was willing to invest $1 million to take over our company. I refused outright. I'd rather go bankrupt than let her benefit. I sat in my office, feeling a mix of calm and frustration. I hadn't contacted Adrian for a month. With the company on the brink of collapse, I felt I should inform him. I called him, and after a long wait, he answered. "Hello." Hearing Adrian's voice, I was emotional. "Adrian, I'm sorry. I couldn't save our company." Adrian's voice was gentle. "It's okay. You've done your best." I was stunned, looking at my phone, when suddenly someone hugged me from behind. That familiar feeling. That familiar scent. My heart raced. "Adrian!" I turned around and buried myself in Adrian's warm embrace, tears in my eyes. "Why are you back? The company is about to go bankrupt. Why did you come back?" Adrian's eyes were filled with guilt as he held me, whispering, "I've missed you every day I've been away." Chapter 20. His words broke down my defenses. I clung to him, feeling his warmth. I choked out, "I've missed you too." Adrian said seriously, "The company won't go bankrupt." I looked up at him. "Really? Check your phone." He said. A notification popped up on my phone. "Your company account has received $50 million. I was stunned. "How is this possible?" Adrian casually replied, "I secured an investment." I looked at him like a hero, my eyes sparkling. But then my face fell. $50 million can solve our immediate problems, but it doesn't address the root cause. Adrian said, "I have evidence of Oliver and your sister's illegal activities against us." I was overjoyed. "I knew you could do it." Adrian rolled his eyes as if blaming me for doubting him earlier. For the past month, I had reported Oliver and my sister's malicious actions to the authorities, but they dismissed it for lack of evidence. Adrian had returned with solid proof, backed by a high-ranking official. Oliver and my sister couldn't escape this time. I had another card to play against the Oliverson family. When our company first opened, several clients ran off, nearly bankrupting us. I suspected foul play and hired a private investigator. The mastermind was Oliver's brother, Jack. Jack and Adrian were college classmates. Jealous of Adrian's success, Jack sabotaged him. I suspected Jack was behind Adrian's company's downfall in my previous life. We exposed the evidence, putting immense pressure on the Oliverson family. Oliver's attack ceased immediately. The Oliverson group was fined $5 billion. To protect their sons, the Oliverson family sent representatives to negotiate and apologize. Adrian and I demanded a public apology from Oliver, Jack, and my sister. The Oliverson family initially refused but eventually relented. However, at the apology event, my sister lost control, screaming, "It's all your fault. How are you so lucky? Your company should have gone bankrupt. Did you sleep with the official to get protection?" Her outrageous outburst went viral, causing further damage to the Oliverson family's reputation. The Oliverson Group's stock plummeted. The Oliverson family claimed my sister had a mental illness and sent her to a psychiatric hospital. Oliver and Jack were disowned by the family, left to fend for themselves. 6 months later, my sister, with a broken leg, was homeless and mentally unstable. My mother, unable to cope, took her own life. My father, depressed, was hit by a car and died. Adrian and I continued to grow our company, becoming billionaires within 3 years. We also had a pair of adorable twins. Epilogue. My name is Adrian, and I have a secret. I was also reborn. When I was young, I met Sophia during an earthquake. I was crying in a corner of the gym, and she took my hand and led me out. Before leaving, she told me to be a brave boy. After that day, I never saw her again, but her words stayed with me, giving me strength. Years later, I learned her parents were looking for a son-in-law. I paid a dowry of $40,000, only to end up marrying her sister. Fate played a cruel joke. I could only watch as Sophia married a wealthy man who didn't love her. My life fell apart, with her sister constantly causing trouble and sabotaging my business. Someone even set me up, leading to my company's downfall. I lost hope and died in a car accident. I never expected to be reborn. This time, I vowed to change our fate. Sophia, my wife, this life, I'll take care of you. No matter what we face, your boy will stand by you. The end.